Thank you. I always like to start a talk with a story. So the title of this story is, We Are So Poor. A father who was very wealthy, and he wanted to take his son, I don't know how old the son was, probably young. He wanted to take his son to show him what poor people are like, how poor people live. And so they found a farm of a very poor family, and they stayed there for a couple of days and a couple of nights. And driving on the way home, the father said, well, what do you think? Did you enjoy the trip? And the son said, oh yeah. And the father said, well, what did you learn? And the son said, I learned and I saw that we have one dog. They had 4 dogs. We have a pool that extends to the middle of our garden. They have a creek that has no end. We have imported lanterns to light our garden. They have the stars at night. We have a small piece of property to live on. They have acres and acres of fields that go beyond sight. We go out and buy our food. They grow their food. We have servants who serve us. They serve others. We have a fence that surrounds and protects our property. They have friends that protect them. And then the father was bewildered and astounded, and he didn't know what to say. And then the son added, thank you, Dad, for showing us how poor we are. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is a series on the 5 basic principles that make up the Unity belief system. Unity has no dogma, except, as I said, just to be kind to one another. But these are the 5 principles. Now, these are not new. It's not as if Unity discovered something new and wonderful and they wanted to share it to the world. These principles have been with us and have been recognized by great masters and great teachers since the beginning of time. Socrates and Aristotle talked about these principles. So what is a principle first? A principle is a law that never changes. It applies to all people, everywhere, all the time. Spiritual principles work the same way. Spiritual principles are constant, unchanging, and impersonal. They work with or without our understanding. They've been tested throughout human history. Discovered, rediscovered, some have been scientifically proven. So we can learn and use these spiritual laws, that the universe does operate by spiritual law. We can apply and understand these spiritual laws, or we can ignore them and then keep coming up with answers that don't work for us. Unity teaches and lives 5 principles. Unity isn't just about coming to a Sunday celebration service or a church service and then going home and going back to doing what you usually do. Unity is a way of life. It's a way of living. It's a way of being. The 5 principles that Unity teach, that really encompasses almost all the spiritual laws, are tools for daily living. They suggest answers to the great questions that humans have pondered, wondered about, wanted to know since the beginning of time. Such questions as, what is the great presence that we sense around us? How can we communicate with this presence? Who and what are we? Why do things happen in our lives the way they happen? And what are we on earth to do? Unity's 5 principles will answer these questions. And Jesus talked about the first principle, which is that God is absolute good and everywhere present. In John, the 10th chapter, the 30th verse, the Father and I are one. He said it, the Father and I are one. The Father's not separate, living on the throne somewhere. The Father and I are one. And what's interesting is most of these quotes come from John, the Gospel of John, which Unity considers the most mystical of all the four Gospels. And from John, the 10th chapter, the 38th verse, even though you do not believe me, believe the works, that you may know and understand that the Father is in me, and I in the Father. Which again, just proves God is within us and without all of us. And from John, the 14th chapter, the 7th verse, if you know me, you will know my Father also. From now on, you do know and have seen him because you've seen Jesus. Look at the person next to you. You have God sitting right there next to you. I know it's sometimes hard to believe, isn't it? The God that we believed in when we were 6 years old doesn't necessarily fit the God that we believe in when we're 60 years old. Some people refuse to update their thinking. For example, there's been such advances in science that they'll prove some of these concepts, yet some people prefer to have the old, outdated belief of who and what God is. God for Grownups. What is this God for Grownups? The God for Grownups is one who meets us where we are and welcomes our questioning, growing, changing, and doubting. More than Santa Claus making a list of who's naughty or nice, this God is a creative force behind sweeping galaxies and infinitesimal life forms, mind-blowing beauty. Any limits that we put on God are our own, for God has no limits. Most people want to believe that God is involved in our lives and has been throughout history. In fact, we have tried throughout history some way to connect with this God. Unity's first principle: God is absolute good, everywhere present. If God is absolute good, everything is good. We are good. If you've been raised like in Catholicism, you've probably heard that Catholicism teaches that we were born in original sin. Not so in the spiritual principles. The spiritual principle is that we are good. God is all there is. God is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. Not all-powerful, but all-power. Not all-knowing, but all-knowledge. And present everywhere, even in the grossest, ugliest human being. God is present. God is present even in someone like Hitler. God is present in someone like Osama bin Laden. God is present in a Jewish temple, in mosque. God is equally and everywhere present. God is the stars, the rocks, the animals, and people. All that we are and have is God. And we can never be separated from this universal power. We can't be separated. No matter what we're doing, God is us. God is within us. If we're no longer feeling close to God, who moved? We are the ones who limit God. Principle 1 maintains that God and I are one. God and you are one. We're not separate and we're not being watched. God is not out there keeping a little list of who's naughty and nice, and if your good list is big enough, you're going to go to heaven, and if your bad list is bigger, you're going to go to hell. That's not who God is. We are immersed in the divine. Did you ever hear about the two fish swimming in a creek or in a lake, and the one fish says, "Hey, have you heard about this new God called water?" We're immersed in God. God is equally and everywhere present. There's no place to look for God. God is an eternal force, not a supreme being with judgments and opinions. God doesn't have an opinion. God doesn't judge us. God doesn't create a hurricane to destroy New Orleans. That's not what God does. God is not creating tornadoes because he doesn't like the people living in Oklahoma. That's not what God does. Like the air that surrounds us, God is available to us. God is source. God is available every moment of every day for our sustenance. Every faith tradition speaks of oneness, although Christianity thinks, oh, I'll tell you a joke. And I tell these jokes only because I grew up Catholic, and this isn't I don't want to tell you that I'm criticizing Catholicism, but I'm going to tell you this joke. This person went to heaven, and there were all these rooms in heaven. And the person said to God, well, what's in all those rooms? And so God said, go ahead, take a look. And in one room were the holy rollers, just singing and praising God, very charismatic. They were praising and singing to God, and that was good. And then in another room, there were Quakers, and there was silence. If you've ever been to a Quaker service, it is truly silent. They sit in silence. I went to one. They sit in silence. And if someone's moved to speak, they speak. If no one's moved to speak, no one speaks. And then there was a room. There were no doors and no windows. And God said, and the person who was in heaven said, well, who's in that room? No doors, no windows. And God said, well, those are the Catholics. They think they're the only ones up here. So, it's not a criticism of Catholicism. I mean, Catholicism was great. Because of Catholicism, I am where I am. The Buddhist sutras envision a net stretching in all directions. In Buddhism, the sutras are their teachings. Hopi Indians spoke of Spider Grandmother, who spun a great web connecting all things. Ancient Chinese have the Tao, which they call the flow of the universe. The hymn of creation from the Hindu Rig Veda speaks of the absolute called Brahman and describes it as the ultimate, beyond human description, infinite beauty. We hear names for God: Holy Spirit, the universe, the way, Father, Mother, Creator, Divine, One Mind, Source Energy, First Cause, and from Star Wars, the Force. May the Force be with you. That is actually a representation of God. Allah, Buddha, Christ, Krishna, Kuan Yin. They're all just different names for God. So people will say, yeah, okay. You say God is good and I'm good, so what about evil? Does evil exist? Yes, it does. Does evil exist as a devil or a separate entity with power? No. Evil only has the power that we give it. That is all. It only has the power that we give it. And I find it interesting that the word evil is the word live spelled backwards. So if you're not really alive and you've separated yourself from God, you may do things that people consider evil. Joseph Conrad, an English writer, said, "The belief in a supernatural source of evil is not necessary. Men alone are quite capable of every wickedness." Now imagine this. You're watching the local news, and the local news says that there is a burglar in your neighborhood breaking into homes. Those who see the report buy extra locks, the bars on their windows, and sleep with a gun nearby. Those who didn't see the report go about their business oblivious and happy. The spiritual goal is to acknowledge that there might be a burglar in the neighborhood, but also to live without fear, to hold to the consciousness that we are safe and secure, that our well-being is just fine. We create our own misery through our belief in adversity and the power it has to destroy us. So imagine that we are now one with God. And if it is true that God is alive in every living thing, how are we treating this God? How are we treating plants and animals, knowing that that animal too is a part of God? That plant is a part of God. How are we treating each other? Imagine if we are living in this oneness with God. Will our life circumstances change? Will we still do things like lose a job or get a fine for speeding? Yes. Outside circumstances in our lives may not change, but how we deal with them will change. It is possible to have this peace that passeth all understanding. We're the ones who label experiences good or bad. To God, everything is good. We're the ones who label it bad. Our outer life may not change if we're living in oneness, but how we respond to the circumstances to our life will change. What we call God is a force of energy, not a supernatural being that intervenes in our life. How we express our divinity is up to us. And one of the ways to express this divinity is called the way of attunement. James Dillett Freeman is a well-known, he has made his transition not that long ago, but he is a well-known, respected, and honored poet, unity poet. And this is what he writes about the way of attunement. There is a way to get the power of God to do what we want it to do. To heal us when we need healing. To supply our needs when we feel lack. To comfort us when we are troubled. To bring us friends when we are lonely. Joy for grief. And peace for pain. To light our path when we are lost and wander frightened in the dark. It is the way that a rainbow is made after rain. It is the way that morning is made following night, and spring is made to come after winter. It is the way that a bare branch brings forth green leaves. It is the way that mist rises out of the sea, and the way that an ugly water bug changes into a dragonfly. I didn't even know that. A water bug changes into a dragonfly. Do you know the way? It's the way of attunement. It's a way of being one with the way of things. At the core of being is a rhythm. When you place yourself in tune with the cosmic rhythm, all things work together for you, and you work in harmony with all things. There is a way of things. This is all you can say of it. But learn the way of things and follow the way. Walk in the way, work in the way, and everything will go your way. The universe is God's work. He made it very good. He made it bring forth good. He made it to move and grow, to unfold and expand. When you move with the universe moves with you, and through you, and for you. Then there is nothing you cannot do or be, because all the forces of the universe, all the expanding energies of life are focused in you and pour through you to come into expression. And now I invite you to prepare for a meditation. If you feel comfortable, I want to invite you to gently close your eyes. Make yourself comfortable in your seats. Take in a deep breath to the count of 4, and then you're going to hold it for 4. So it's inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale for 4. 2, 3, 4. I invite you to scan your body. And if you notice any tension or any uncomfortableness, just in your mind's eye, tell that part of your body to just relax and let go of that tension. And affirm with me silently inside your mind's eye. I am safe and secure and surrounded by love. In your mind's eye, I am safe and secure and surrounded by love. One more time. I am safe and secure and surrounded by love. I am open and receptive to what God has to reveal to me today. I am open and receptive to what God has to reveal to me today. We are one with God. Yes. We are one with life. Yes. We are wisdom. We are wise. Yes. We are peace. Yes. All the answers to all our questions are within us. Yes. We are healthy and strong, for God lives within us. Yes. We are good. Yes. Every experience in our life, no matter what the appearance, is good. Yes. We see the world through the eyes of God. Yes. And we say, it is good. It is awesome. It is beautiful. We see our brothers and sisters, our friends, and our relatives as children of God. Not just children of God, but we recognize that God lives inside of them. And we say, Namaste. Namaste, which means the divinity in me recognizes and honors the divinity in you. Namaste. When we see a plant, we see it with love because it's good. When we see an ugly weed, we see it with love because it's good. When we see a human being broken, We say that this is good. And we know that God lives inside of them as God lives inside of us. And so we share that loving energy with them. We say yes to life. We say yes to love. We say yes to peace. For we know that all is in divine order and God exists in us, through us, and all around us. And it is good. And I invite you to come back to this time and place and gently open your eyes. And inside your bulletin, we're going to sing another song.